He told me love had no borders. I just didn't know he meant immigration paperwork. The day I realized my marriage was built on sand, I wasn't looking for pain. I was simply standing at my kitchen counter, stirring sugar into my tea the way I always do. 2 spoons. Slow enough that the tiny grains make that soft scratching sound against the mug. It was a gray Tuesday morning, the kind where rain hangs in the air like a secret. And when my husband Daniel walked into the kitchen, humming some American pop song off-key, I remember thinking, how lucky I am. How fortunate I must be. Funny how the heart can be so sincere. While someone else is only pretending. He came up behind me, kissed my cheek, and said, "Morning, baby." His voice was warm, but his lips barely touched my skin, as if the affection was an obligation, not a feeling. I didn't catch it then. Love makes fools of even the most cautious hearts. I smiled back, placed the mug in front of him, and teased, "You hum like the fan in my mother's old house, tired and offbeat." He laughed. Or pretended to. Looking back, his laugh always held a hollow center, like a drum made for show, not music. That morning, I wasn't thinking about visas or betrayals or packed luggage waiting to be discovered. I was thinking about plans, our Ramadan with my family, the house we were saving for, the children we talked about, the little garden I wanted in the backyard. I was thinking about a future, while he was thinking about a departure date. But life has a way of revealing truth in the small things, long before the big things fall apart. That morning, it began with one sentence, almost invisible in the moment. "Do you think your sister will ever move abroad too?" He asked casually, sipping the tea I made. I blinked at him, confused. He rarely asked about my family, and I should have known then. People start showing interest in doors they want to escape through. But instead, I just smiled and shrugged. "She loves it here." "Why? You planning to build a whole army of us overseas?" He chuckled, a little too quickly, before kissing my forehead and grabbing his bag. "I'll see you tonight," he said, leaving before I could ask anything else, and the door closed with that soft click. The sound you hear right before everything in your life changes, and you don't realize it yet. People assume betrayal begins with yelling, slammed doors, and late-night texts. But my story, it began quietly. At the time, I believed my life was steady. Stable job as an accountant at a local firm, a small but warm apartment filled with soft lights and beige curtains, scented candles that smelled like jasmine and vanilla. Daniel always teased me for buying too many. We'd only been married a year. We met while he was working remotely from Pakistan, doing freelance IT work when his company downsized. He was charming, patient, spoke Urdu with an accent that made my cousins giggle, and treated me like I was sunlight, or so I thought. I remember our wedding, a modest gathering, laughter echoing through my parents' courtyard, henna drying on my palms, the soft weight of flowers in my hair, my father's eyes shining with pride, and Daniel looking at me like I was the answer to a question he had chased for years. Everyone loved him, especially my mother. "A foreigner who respects our culture?" She whispered once, squeezing my arm. "Allah has sent you a blessing." I believed that. I believed everything. Our days were ordinary and sweet. Morning prayers, breakfast together when schedules allowed, little post-it notes on the fridge. He said I made the best chai, even though he drank coffee. He held my hand when we walked, always slightly proudly, like he was showing me off, and I adored him like only a new wife can. We talked about dreams, buying a house in Lahore first, then maybe one abroad one day. He spoke about career growth, stability, building a life. I thought we were building the same one. Looking back, I see how much of that time feels like a film someone else lived. A version of me who didn't yet know how quickly trust can become a weapon. Back then, life smelled like breakfast parathas, jasmine tea, and weekend movie nights. There was laughter, shared prayers, plans scribbled in notebooks with little doodles of homes and babies. If someone had told me then that my husband didn't love me, that all his gentle words, soft looks, and promises were tools. Steps in a ladder leading him out of the country. I would have laughed. Love makes fools of us all. Or maybe kindness does. The first strange thing happened 3 weeks after that rainy Tuesday. I noticed Daniel had started dressing sharper for work, collared shirts instead of the casual tees he usually wore. His hair styled neatly, even a touch of cologne some mornings. "You look handsome," I said, smiling like a proud wife. He gave a quick nod instead of the usual playful tease. Cold, just slightly. "Barely enough to notice. Unless you loved him." He started coming home later, too. I had meetings, clients in different time zones, networking with the new company branch. Perfectly reasonable excuses. So I believe them. That's the problem with loyalty. It builds a bridge between you and someone else, and you never imagine they're using it to walk away. I remember one evening, sitting on the couch, TV playing softly. I waited for his keys in the lock, that little metallic sound we learned to associate with safety. But that night, when he came home, he smelled faintly like someone else's perfume. Sweet, floral, unfamiliar. Not jasmine. "Not my scent," I asked him gently. "New colleague?" He froze, just for half a second. A tiny pause. Quick, but sharp enough to cut something inside me. Yeah," he said. "One of the managers." He never looked me in the eyes as he said it. And I, foolish. Faithful me. I brushed his hair, kissed his forehead, and told myself love meant trust. I didn't know I had just welcomed deceit into my living room. He didn't know yet, but a storm was coming, and when I send someone home, I don't send them quietly. I send them with truth as their luggage, and dignity as my passport. If someone had walked into our home that month, they wouldn't have noticed anything unusual. There's a certain quietness to betrayal, a softness, almost fragile, like a thread slowly unraveling, one loop at a time, until you realize your whole sweater is gone. On the surface, life was as normal as ever. I still lit the jasmine candle every evening. I still packed his lunch, chicken wraps, fruit, the occasional sweet. I still ironed his shirts on Sundays, humming old songs under my breath. But something inside me had shifted, a feeling I couldn't name yet, a weight at the edge of my heart like an unspoken warning. It began in small moments, like the night he came home and went straight to the shower, clothes thrown in the laundry basket, phone tucked into his pocket instead of placed on the counter like usual, and the way he started turning his phone face down. A tiny flick of the wrist, casual, practiced, like someone who had rehearsed hiding long before they actually needed to. I told myself not to overthink it. Trust, I reminded myself, is not a light switch you flip off at the first flicker of doubt. But there's something about a woman's intuition. It sits quiet in your ribs until the truth is too loud to ignore. A Friday night alone, he came home late that Friday, shoulders tense, eyes refusing to meet mine. "I'm exhausted," he muttered, dropping his bag by the door. I looked up from the dinner table, biryani still steaming, raita chilled, salad crisp. I had been waiting for hours, reheating the rice once, then twice. "Did you eat?" I asked softly, trying not to sound hurt. He hesitated. Yeah. They ordered food after the meeting. A lie doesn't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes it whispers through timing, tone, and the way someone suddenly can't swallow properly. I forced a smile. "All right. Change and rest. I'll put this away." As I packed up the untouched biryani, my fingers trembled slightly. Not from anger. Not yet. From the kind of sadness that sits behind your throat and pretends to be patience. Later that night, he fell asleep facing the wall. I lay awake beside him, listening to his breathing, steady and unaware. I wondered if he dreamed of me. Or if he dreamed of somewhere else. Someone else. Some other life. A conversation with my mother. A few days later, my mother called. "Bete, you sound tired," she said. "Mothers don't need to see your face to hear your heart." "Just busy," I replied, wiping counters even though they were already clean. "Daniel not home?" she asked casually. I hesitated. "He's working late again." There was a silence on the other end, long, thoughtful. She didn't know anything. She wasn't suspicious, but her pause felt like a mirror held up to my fear. "You know," she whispered, "marriage is patience. But if something feels wrong, don't let it rot in silence." I swallowed thickly. She didn't know how close her words came to my truth. The first real crack happened 2 weeks later. I was setting the dining table for dinner. 2 plates, salad bowl, water jug. Routine has a rhythm, and mine had been the rhythm of a wife in love. Daniel walked in, not realizing I was home early. His voice floated from the hallway first. Soft, low, almost tender. He was on the phone. No. Soon, I promise. Just a little more time. You know how immigration processes are. My blood chilled. Immigration. It wasn't the word itself. It was his tone. Warm, familiar, intimate. Like someone planning a future. Not with me, but somewhere else entirely. I froze, hand still on the water jug. He didn't say my name. He didn't say wife. Just, "She doesn't know," and "almost done." Almost done. Those words. They sliced through me like winter wind. When he hung up and noticed me standing there, he jumped slightly. "Oh, hey. You're home early?" His smile was tight, too quick, like a sheet pulled over broken glass. I asked nothing. He offered nothing. We ate dinner in silence, his fork scraping softly against the plate. My heart scraping quietly against truth, seeds of suspicion. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself marriage needed grace. But doubt, once planted, grows like wild ivy, climbing, twisting, pulling apart everything in its way. He started spending weekends networking at cafes. He brought home printed immigration brochures just to explore future options. He asked questions like, "Would you ever want to live abroad?" Just hypothetically. His eyes studied me too closely as he asked. Not hopeful, calculated. I began noticing things in our apartment too. Emails minimized when I walked by. Calls taken in the corridor instead of the couch. A file on his desk titled U.S. Transition Plan. My heart twisted. Not because he wanted a future abroad, but because he was planning it without me. One night, while he showered, I opened his laptop. I didn't want to. I hated myself for even thinking it, but love can make you blind. Suspicion can make you see. His screen was locked. Password changed. That was the moment I exhaled. A long, slow breath that tasted like the end of something. Trust was gone. That's not loud. It doesn't slam doors or throw plates. Trust dies quietly, with a click of a keyboard. A turned phone screen. A wife sitting in the dim glow of a living room lamp, realizing her marriage has become a stranger's house, and yet... I wasn't ready to confront. Not yet. I needed truth, not just suspicion. I needed proof, not just pain. And if he thought I was going to crumble quietly, he had married the wrong woman, because when a man uses marriage as a ticket, he forgets one thing. A ticket can take you somewhere, but a wife can bring you home, and I would. Just not the way he imagined. I believe there are moments in life when God places a hand on your shoulder, not gently, not softly, but firmly. A warning, a wake-up, a whisper in the soul. See what you have been refusing to see. For me, that moment came one Saturday morning. The sky outside was washed in pale gold. I was chopping onions for breakfast omelets, humming softly. Daniel walked out of the bedroom, dressed unusually well for a weekend, button-down shirt, cologne strong enough to announce his presence before he entered the room. "Client brunch," he said, grabbing his keys. "Networking event." He didn't look at me when he said it. People who tell the truth look you in the eyes. People who lie look at the exit. I nodded, wiped my hands on a towel. "Be safe," I said quietly. He mumbled something in return and left. The door closed behind him with a finality I couldn't explain. like the last page of a chapter. And then, 30 seconds later, I heard the soft ding of his phone. He had forgotten it. God doesn't always thunder. Sometimes he nudges. My hands froze midair, towel still hanging loosely. I stared at the phone on the console table, screen lighting gently like a heartbeat. A part of me whispered, "Don't look." Good wives don't spy. But another voice, older, wiser, beaten and rebuilt, rose in my chest. Faith without truth is not loyalty. It is blindness. And I had been blind long enough. I picked up the phone. It wasn't password locked. That alone was cruel. Because a small piece of me realized he didn't lock it not out of trust, but because he believed I would never dare to look. He underestimated the quiet woman in his kitchen. The messages, the screen opened to a WhatsApp chat pinned at the top. A name I didn't recognize. Jamie. My stomach dropped. That little heart. Not casual, not friendly. Intimate. I tapped the chat. The first message I saw felt like a slap to the soul. Jamie. I miss you. Counting days until we can be together, and then Daniel's reply sent early that morning. Daniel. Soon. Just need her signature on one more set of papers next week. After that, we're free like I was a cage. Like marriage to me was a prison sentence, not a promise. My pulse thundered in my ears. I scrolled further. Jamie, you sure she won't find out? Daniel, she's naive, traditional, thinks love means trust. It's perfect. He didn't just lie to me. He mocked me. He used my loyalty as a strategy. I felt something inside my chest twist. Not a snap. Not yet. Just the first tier of a fabric stretched too far. I kept reading, each line like glass in my hands. Jamie, we'll start fresh once I come there. I can't wait to have you here without all this hiding. Daniel, I know. This marriage thing was a process, not a lifetime plan. Just paperwork. Almost done, just paperwork, not a wife. Not a partner. A visa application in a bridal dress. My vision blurred. I sat down slowly, gripping the phone as if dropping it would shatter me instead. There were photos too. Dinner dates. Coffee shops. Selfies. His smile brighter with her than it had been with me in months. Not guilty. Joyful. Free. Already. And then the final blow. A voice note. Sent last night. I pressed play with trembling fingers. His voice came through, soft, affectionate, the tone I once believed belonged only to me. Baby. Just a little longer. She'll sign the sponsor papers next week. After that, I'm yours. Next week, papers, not dreams. Not futures. Not love. Papers. The room suddenly felt too small, as if the walls leaned in to witness my humiliation. My breath came uneven. Each inhale sharp like winter air. I set the phone down slowly, as though it was something fragile or dangerous. I was not the first woman to be used for a visa. But at that moment, it felt like the world narrowed to a single point. He married me for escape, not companionship, and he believed I would never see the truth. Oh, but I did. The call I shouldn't have dialed. I don't remember deciding to do it. But suddenly my fingers dialed an international number from the chat history. It rang twice before a woman answered. Warm voice. Slightly excited, unaware of the storm waiting for her. Hello? I swallowed. Is this Jamie? A pause. Yes, who is this? I'm Daniel's wife. Silence. Then, a breath. Sharp, stunned, and then her voice. Steady, almost defensive. He told me you were separated. He said. I cut her off, tone steady despite the quake inside me. He lied to both of us. A shaky exhale left her lips. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I believed her. Her voice didn't carry deceit, just confusion, embarrassment, regret. It didn't comfort me. I hope, I whispered. You never feel what I feel right now. Before she could reply, I hung up, not out of rudeness, but because dignity sometimes deserves silence. Standing in the ruins, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. No tears, not yet. Some heartbreaks are too heavy to fall all at once. They sit in the chest, dense, waiting for a place to spill. My tea had gone cold. The onions I chopped lay forgotten on the board. Life looked the same, but nothing was familiar-free. He thought he married a bridge to a better life, but he married a woman with a backbone made from patience and steel beneath it. I wiped my hands, stood up slowly, and whispered to the empty kitchen. "You wanted a visa, Daniel, and you will get one." My voice didn't shake. "But you will take it back home with you, not to America, because I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to break. I was going to prepare, calmly, thoughtfully. A departure was coming. His, and I would send him home in style, with honesty as his farewell gift, and consequences as his plane ticket. There is a strange quiet that arrives after truth breaks open. Not relief. No, relief is gentle and earned. This quiet felt like the stillness right before a monsoon hits, the kind where trees stand frozen. Birds go silent, and the air holds its breath. I spent the next hour cleaning the kitchen, not because it needed cleaning, but because my hands needed purpose while my heart tried to understand its new shape. Every plate I rinsed, every crumb I wiped, every spoon I aligned. I felt something settling inside me. Not rage. Not hysteria. Not despair, a kind of steadiness. Like steel cooling into form, he had taken my trust. He had taken my dignity, but he would not take my peace. And he would not take my future, the quiet planning. I didn't storm to his workplace. I didn't call my family crying. I didn't message him a single word. People think revenge is fire. Mine was ice, slow, clear, controlled. I sat on the sofa and opened my laptop. I wasn't searching for him. I wasn't searching for her. I was searching immigration law visa timelines, sponsorship obligations, revocation process. Every page I read was like oxygen returning to my lungs. Knowledge is power, and I refused to be a helpless character in his plan. I learned the sponsor can withdraw support before final approval. Misrepresentation can lead to visa cancellation and a ban. Emotional betrayal isn't a legal term, but fraud is. And Daniel, in his arrogance, left a trail. Messages, voice notes, promises, plans. He had built his freedom on paperwork, but I would use paperwork to set myself free too. I created a folder on my desktop. Daniel Visa, fraud. Evidence I never imagined I'd type those words. Life has a way of forcing your fingers into realities the heart never asked for. He returned. He came home humming again. Same song. Same rhythm, same false brightness. If heartbreak had a taste, it would be this moment. Watching a man carry betrayal so casually, like keys in his pocket. "Babe, I'm starving," he said, dropping his bag, loosening his collar. "Smells good in here." "Did you cook?" "Yes," I replied softly, eyes still on my laptop screen. "I kept it warm for you." My tone didn't waver. He didn't notice anything. That's the thing about people who betray you. They assume you are still asleep in your love for them. "Ah, you're the best." He kissed the top of my head carelessly and went to shower. His phone still sat where I'd left it earlier, on the console near the door. I didn't touch it again. I didn't need to. I already knew everything, and now I had something he didn't. Time. He thought I was unaware. He thought I was still loving him. In a way, I was. But it was a different kind of love now, the kind that lets go. Dinner for two we ate together. He with hearty appetite. Me with a steady hand. He told me about networking, about future possibilities, about how we could live abroad someday. I listened the way one listens to a stranger talking at a bus stop. Courteous, distant, untouched. My silence must have felt different, because midway through his story, he frowned slightly. "You okay?" he asked, fork pausing in the air. I gave him a soft smile, one I had practiced in the mirror just moments before. "Just thinking," I said. "About our future." His eyes softened with relief. He believed me. Deception has a way of making the guilty feel comfortable in false security. He reached for my hand, squeezed it affectionately. You know I'm doing all this for us, right? I held his gaze. Yes, I said gently. I know exactly what you're doing. He smiled, proud of himself. Proud of his lies. Proud of his plan. If I had any weakness left for him, it died right there, the night before the storm, when he went to bed. I remained awake. I sat near the window, moonlight spilling across the floor, and breathed slowly. I wasn't planning revenge out of rage, but out of self-respect. He wanted freedom? He would get it. He just wouldn't get it in the country he planned. I drafted an email, addressed to the immigration office. I didn't send it yet. No, not tonight. Tonight was for understanding myself again. I walked quietly into our bedroom and watched him sleep. Face relaxed. Breathing steady, dreams untouched by guilt. He looked peaceful. It amazed me. How someone can destroy your world but sleep like theirs is untouched. I whispered. Not to him, but to my own heart. You will not break. You will rise. And in that moment, I felt something shift. A release. A severing of emotional ties. He may have married me for escape, but I would not let his intentions imprison me. A phone call that sealed everything, just as I turned from the bed. His phone vibrated softly on the nightstand. I didn't intend to look. I had enough truth, enough pain, but then her name flashed. Jamie, the preview message. Can't wait to start our life. You deserve everything. My breath steadied, not shaken. My shoulders relaxed, not tensed. This wasn't a wound anymore. It was clarity. I turned off the lamp and left the room, because tomorrow, I wouldn't just confront him. I would set him free, and set myself free with him. He used me to reach a destination, but I would use truth to send him back. And when I send someone home, it is never with noise, never with chaos. I send them home with truth in their suitcase and silence as their escort. That is dignity. That is justice. And tomorrow, Daniel would meet both. Morning didn't arrive gently. It arrived like realization always does. Quiet at first, then absolute. I woke before dawn. The sky still unsure whether to breathe light or remain loyal to the night. He slept beside me, unbothered. Like betrayal was a blanket he'd grown comfortable under. I watched him for a moment, not out of love anymore, but for closure. The kind where your heart studies the last page not because you're uncertain, but because you want to remember what you survived. I got dressed without sound, jeans, clean shirt, steady pulse, not the clothes of a broken woman, the clothes of a woman stepping into truth on her own feet. I brewed coffee, slow, deliberate. Not to drink, but because ceremony matters when endings are quiet. Some battles don't need swords, only stillness. And when he finally wandered into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes, he smiled like life was predictable. Morning, he murmured. Yes, I replied softly. It is. He didn't hear it, but my voice didn't tremble anymore. That was the first sign the war was already mine. The first crack, he noticed my suitcase by the door. The small one. The quiet kind that looks like a weekend plan, not a life departure. Oh? He chuckled lightly, confused. Business trip? Or surprising me with something? His confidence was almost beautiful, in the way a house looks moments before lightning touches it. No surprises, I said gently. Just truth, he blinked. That subtle shift between assumption and fear. The first flicker of recognition that comfort is not guaranteed. Is something wrong? I met his eyes, steady as cooled steel. Yes, I replied. And something is right, too. Confusion, worry, denial. They all tried to surface on his face at once. But I didn't let him speak. Truth has its own timing. And I had preserved this moment like art. The conversation that changed nothing. And everything. I know, I said quietly. His lips parted, instinct reaching for lies, excuses tightening behind his teeth. "Know what?" he whispered. "Because cowards always start with innocence. That you chose another life while pretending to share mine." A pause. A breath. A universe reorganizing itself in silence. His face drained. Not because he loved me, but because consequences suddenly had a pulse. "Listen," he began. "No," I said. It wasn't anger. It was authority. I listened long enough. He swallowed, his bravado returning like a reflex. "You misunderstood." "I didn't misunderstand," I interrupted. "I simply woke up," his jaw tightened. Pride flared. Betrayers hide behind arrogance when shame is too heavy. "You can't just—" "I already did," I whispered. Sometimes the softest words cut deepest. Silence does the rest. "Release. I won't scream," I said. "I won't beg. I won't fight for what doesn't want me." His eyes flicked to the suitcase again. Panic tried to bloom. Unpracticed, clumsy. "What are you doing?" "I'm not leaving you," I answered. "You left already." I pulled a folder from the counter and placed it gently in front of him. Printed screenshots, dates, timelines, immigration policy links. The evidence of his ambition dressed as love. His hand trembled when he touched it. Not with guilt, but with fear. "I won't ruin you," I said. "That's not who I am." Relief flickered. Too soon. "But I also won't protect you," I continued softly. "That's no longer my job." His breath broke. For the first time, he saw the version of me he never imagined, the one who rises instead of pleads. "You won't lose your future because of me," I whispered. "You will lose it because of you." I picked up my suitcase. "You wanted freedom," I said. "You have it." When I reached the door, he finally spoke. Voice cracked, pride dissolved. "Wait." "Please." I paused, not for him, but to honor the woman who once loved him. "I did," I said gently. "For a long time." Then I opened the door and stepped into a future he never imagined I would choose for myself. Not broken, not bitter, just free. And as the sun rose, I knew one simple truth. Some endings aren't about loss. They're about returning to yourself. The immigration building wasn't dramatic. No echoing halls, no cinematic lighting, just fluorescent bulbs and quiet paperwork. Funny how life can shatter in bedrooms, but rebuild in government offices. I walked in with my evidence file pressed to my chest, not like a weapon, but like truth wrapped in stillness. The receptionist smiled. I smiled back. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it waits in line patiently. "Purpose of visit?" she asked. I didn't tremble. I didn't hesitate. "Visa sponsorship withdrawal," I said softly, "and filing a report for misrepresentation." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Not gossip, not judgment, just recognition. There is a look women give women when they see both the wound and the sword. "Take a seat," she whispered. "I'll call you," I thanked her gently. Rage brings noise. Dignity brings gravity. The interview room. The officer called my name. I followed him into a small room. 4 walls, 1 table, 1 truth. "Why are you withdrawing sponsorship?" I opened my folder. Placed the documents down like prayer offerings. "He married me for status," I said. "He built a plan, not a marriage. No tears." "Not today," he read in silence. Screenshots, promises, her name with a red heart, travel dates that didn't include me. When he finished, he looked up. "You understand this could permanently affect his immigration eligibility?" I nodded. "Yes, I'm aware." "Are you doing this to punish him?" I held his gaze. "No, he made a choice. I'm simply acknowledging it." His expression shifted. Respect, quiet, almost protective. "So this is your final decision?" "My first self-respecting one in years," I replied. Signing away a future that wasn't mine. The form slid across the table. I read every word, not because I doubted, but because endings deserve ceremony. When I signed my name, my hand didn't shake. It felt like pressing a key after a long silence. Enter, exit, begin again. He stamped the paper, an ordinary sound, yet it echoed like a door unlocking inside me. "Thank you for coming in yourself," he said quietly. "That takes strength," I smiled. "Small, steady. It takes truth," I corrected. "Strength comes after. The walk out." The hallway felt brighter when I left. Not because the lights changed, but because I did. I didn't rush. Freedom does not sprint. It walks with certainty. My phone vibrated. His name on the screen. I didn't answer. Not out of cruelty, but because conversations are gifts, and he no longer earned mine. I stepped outside. Cold air kissed my face. Not harsh, just honest. For the first time, I wasn't someone's plan. I was my own. And in that quiet morning breeze, one truth settled in my bones. Some closures aren't confrontations. They are signatures. They are silence. And they are sacred. I got home before noon. The house was still, untouched, unaware. Funny how walls can hold memories without taking sides. I placed my bag on the dining table, my fingers brushing the wood where we once shared dreams over breakfast. Dreams he used like stepping stones. I boiled water for tea. Not chai for him, just tea for me. Small choices matter when reclaiming life. Steam rose quietly, filling the kitchen like a soft reminder, you did not break. You chose yourself. I sat down, hands wrapped around the warm cup, when the front door burst open. He wasn't humming. Not today. "Where were you?" he asked, breath uneven. For the first time, I noticed panic in his eyes, not fear of losing me, but fear of losing his plan. Interesting how love never reached him, but consequences did. "I step out sometimes," I replied calmly. He dropped his keys too fast, metal clattering against wood, a sound too sharp for morning peace. "You didn't answer your phone." "Yes," I said simply. Sometimes silence says enough. He blinked, confused, unsettled, not yet understanding, but feeling the shift in the air. People like him can sense when the ground beneath them starts learning how to stand alone. Suspicion wears a cheap perfume. He paced the living room, restless, searching, replaying. Men who deceive often assume they're the thinkers, and everyone else is just living inside their script. He looked at me like a student searching a teacher's face for clues to the exam. "Did something happen?" he asked carefully. "Did someone say something to you?" There it was, not guilt, anticipation of exposure. "No," I answered quietly. My clarity came from silence, not from others. He frowned. Silence frightens liars more than accusations. Noise can be denied. Stillness? It witnesses, the first crack in his confidence. He walked over, crouched slightly, trying to meet my eyes like the man he pretended to be. "You're acting weird," he said softly. "Talk to me." I looked into his face, the one I once believed held future and forever, and I saw it clearly now. He had charm, but no character, promise in his voice, but emptiness in his heart. "I'm not acting," I said. "I'm awakening." That unsettled him. People fear different languages. I was speaking truth he had never learned. "What does that mean?" he asked too quickly. "It means," I said, lifting my cup calmly, "you should enjoy your peace today. You won't have it much longer." His breath hitched, not guilt, recognition. Truth was no longer knocking. It was standing in the doorway. When panic learns your name, he watched me the way a gambler watches cards fall, knowing luck just ran out. "Are you saying something happened?" He pushed again, voice rising. I kept my tone level. "I'm saying time has a way of revealing truth, and today, time was generous." He swallowed hard, a man choking on the consequences he once considered too weak to matter. "I don't like this," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "You're scaring me." I didn't flinch. "That's you meeting honesty," I said. He stared, lost, unsettled, rattled. Men like him don't fear losing love. They fear losing opportunity. Opportunity was trembling now. A doorbell that announced, "Karma with shoes." On before he could form another lie disguised as concern, the doorbell rang. One short ring, firm, official. He stiffened. "Are you expecting someone?" he whispered. "Yes," I answered softly. For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy, suspended, charged. He opened the door. 2 officers stood outside. Not dramatic. Not aggressive, just present. "Daniel?" One asked. He froze. Yes?" His voice shook. "We need to discuss your immigration file. We were informed of possible misrepresentation. We'd like to ask some questions." His face drained. Not white with innocence, but gray with realization. I stood behind him, calm, composed. He turned to me, disbelief in his eyes. You reported me?" I held his gaze with gentle truth. "No," I said softly. "I told the truth. The report belonged to your actions, not my hands." He shook his head, betrayal twisting his features. "But I thought you loved me." "I did," I said, voice steady, steady like morning light. "And love deserved honesty. You gave it strategy." One officer looked between us, understanding without needing details. "Sir, we need you to come with us for questioning." His voice cracked, not with sorrow, but with fear of losing the life he built on deceit. "This isn't fair," he whispered. I gave him a tender, quiet half-smile. "Fairness is finally arriving," I replied. "You met the door. Truth opened it." He looked at me one last time, waiting for pity, plea, hesitation. But there was none. Just grace. Grace doesn't mean you stay. Sometimes grace means you stand. As they led him out, he kept turning back, as if I would call his name and undo the consequences. I didn't. Some silences are mercy. Some silences are boundaries. This silence was rebirth. The door closed, the world exhaled, and for the first time in months, so did I. The afternoon sunlight slid across my living room floor like it was painting a new beginning 1 inch at a time. I sat quietly, just breathing. Not celebrating. Not collapsing, just being. There is a stillness after justice that feels almost holy. Then, as expected, my phone began to ring. His sister first. I let it ring twice. Not to worry her, but because peace takes priority now, I answered on the 3rd ring. "Auntie?" she said, using the name his family always used for me. Her voice trembled, a balance between confusion and fear. "What happened?" "Daniel just messaged us from the office." He said, "You? You accused him of visa fraud?" "Accused." Funny how truth is always dressed as accusation when it arrives at the guilty doorstep. I inhaled softly. "I didn't accuse him," I replied. I confirmed him. Silence traveled through the line. Not shock, recognition. Sometimes families know more than they admit aloud. "But why didn't you tell us first?" she whispered. "Because it wasn't a family matter," I said. "It was a marriage matter. And in my marriage, I was the only one present." She exhaled shakily, a sound heavy with things she never said before. I always felt something was wrong," she murmured. "He talked about moving overseas so much. It never sounded like love. It sounded like escape." Truth has a way of making others remember their own doubts. "I'm sorry," she whispered. There was sincerity in it. "Not for him, but for me. I don't need apologies," I told her gently. "Just honesty. Even if it arrives late." She sniffed. Not weeping, just humbled. "Are you okay?" she asked, a simple question. A sacred one. "Yes," I answered. And for the first time, it felt true. I'm rebuilding, slowly, quietly. "If you ever need anything," she offered softly, "call me." Family isn't always chosen well, but it can learn. I smiled faintly. "Thank you." We hung up. No drama, no flames. Just the soft closing of a chapter she never meant to write in, when blame wears expensive perfume. His mother called next. Her voice wasn't trembling. It was sharp, polished, a blade disguised as motherly concern. I heard you ruined my son's life. Ah. And there it was. The world loves washing dirty behavior in clean emotion. I didn't ruin anything, I replied calmly. I just stopped participating in the ruin of mine. She scoffed, the kind of sound people make when truth scrapes against pride. You could have handled this privately. I did, I said. For months. In silence. In tears he never saw, in hopes he didn't deserve. A pause. Heavy. Dense. She wasn't used to a voice that didn't bend. You should have talked to us, she insisted. With respect, I replied gently. Had I spoken to you, you would have asked me to protect him. I chose to protect myself. A breath from her, sharp, offended. You're heartless, she hissed. I didn't flinch. I didn't defend. Heartless? I murmured. No, my heart was used. And when the heart learns its lesson, the world confuses wisdom with ice. She hung up without goodbye. Some endings don't deserve ceremony. I brewed another cup of tea, not out of habit, but because warm things remind us we are alive. The house felt different. Not empty, open, pain-left space. Healing was beginning to unpack. I wiped the kitchen counter slowly, not cleaning, grounding. There is therapy in simple motions. Then I walked to the mirror, not to fix myself, but to see myself. I stared, not criticizing, not searching, just witnessing. Eyes steady. Shoulders relaxed. A woman who chose herself finally. I looked like someone stepping into her own name. And in that quiet reflection, a truth settled gently over me like a shawl. I didn't lose a husband. I released a burden. One final message. My phone buzzed again. This time a text. Not from him. From her. Jamie. The woman he planned a future with. Her message was long. Apologies. Confusion, pleas for understanding, a twist of guilt and guiltlessness. But one line stood alone. I didn't know he was married for a visa. I didn't respond immediately. I let silence breathe between us for a moment, because silence speaks when hearts need truth. Then I typed, slowly, clearly with grace, you were deceived too. But remember, when someone uses one woman as a ladder, they will eventually climb over another. I paused, then added, free yourself before he turns his future into your lesson. I didn't send it for my closure. I sent it so she wouldn't inherit my wound. Growth is when you protect others from the pain you survived, she replied instantly, not with anger. Not with excuses, just one line. Thank you. Sometimes, the women who could have been pitted against each other become mirrors instead, reflecting wounds, not weapons. Nightfall without fear. That night, I sat outside on the porch. The evening breeze touched my skin like the world finally remembered me. I didn't cry. I didn't replay fights that never happened. I just breathed. Freedom doesn't always arrive with cheers. Sometimes it sits beside you quietly and holds your hand in the dark. And as the stars spread across the sky, I felt it. Not happiness, not relief. A calm I earned with truth I stood by. Tomorrow I would begin again. Not as his wife. Not as his stepping stone, but as myself. And that felt sacred. The first morning after everything, I woke without an alarm. No tension in my chest. No cold dread running through my veins. Just quiet sunlight spilling over the floorboards, and the smell of brewing coffee filling the kitchen. I walked through the house slowly, not inspecting, not seeking reminders, just observing the space I had created for myself. Every corner felt different now. Every empty chair, every unmade bed whispered of independence. I made breakfast for one, not because I was lonely, but because I was learning to savor my own company. The warmth of the toast, the crisp snap of the eggs, returning to myself. Even the steam rising from the coffee cup felt like tiny, perfect celebrations of normalcy. The day passed slowly, deliberately. I unpacked boxes I hadn't touched in months, books I had forgotten, notebooks I had abandoned, papers that carried fragments of dreams I thought I'd lost. Each item returned to its place was a small stitch in the fabric of a life I was finally reclaiming. I went outside in the afternoon, letting sunlight fall across my face, listening to the distant hum of children playing, dogs barking, neighbors calling greetings to each other. Life moved on, yes, but it had carved a space for me too. I was allowed to move forward, at my own pace. Letters to myself. That evening, I wrote letters. Not to anyone else, but to myself, the me who had been used, betrayed, and underestimated. Dear me, I wrote, you survived someone who loved strategy more than truth. You stood firm when they thought you would kneel. You are stronger than the fear you carried, and more powerful than the silence you endured. Never forget that you own your life, and no one else can take that from you. I sealed the letters in envelopes and tucked them into a drawer in my nightstand. A ritual for remembrance, so that if ever doubt crept back, I could remind myself of the quiet courage that had rebuilt me from the inside out. A walk that wasn't lonely. I left the house for a long walk that evening, letting the sun dip low across the horizon. The air smelled of damp earth and late blooms, and for the first time in months, I noticed the sound of leaves scraping gently against the pavement. I passed familiar streets, familiar faces, and instead of feeling the weight of isolation, I felt rooted. I was no longer a part of someone else's story. I was the author of my own. I bought a small notebook from a corner shop. A notebook I promised myself I would fill with ideas, dreams, reflections, and plans. Not about revenge, not about him, not about what was lost. Just about what could be gained. My life, one deliberate step at a time. The quiet lessons, sitting on the porch that night, the stars scattered across the sky like whispers. I realized something simple and profound. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't always come with fireworks. It's small, quiet victories. Making coffee just for yourself. Reading a book that reminds you who you were. Writing letters to yourself. Breathing in the air of a life that finally belongs to you. I forgave. Not because he deserved it, but because I needed to release the weight. I mourned, not because I lost him, but because I lost illusions about him. And I celebrated, not because of triumph over him, but because I had returned to myself. A symbol of closure, I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the dresser. Not with anger, not with bitterness, with acknowledgement. The chapter had closed. I had learned, endured, and grown. The ring was a symbol not of loss, but of liberation. And as I looked at it one last time, I whispered to myself, I am not defined by what someone took from me. I am defined by what I choose to carry forward. A new morning, by the time the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, I had filled pages of the notebook with plans. Simple ones, meaningful ones, morning walks, cooking meals that nourish my soul. Small trips to places I'd never visited, letters to friends I'd neglected, dreams I had shelved waiting for someone else's permission. The house felt alive now. Not because anyone else had returned, but because I had returned. Fully, entirely, unapologetically. I realized that the end of one story does not mean the end of life. It only means the beginning of the next chapter, the one we write ourselves, with courage, clarity, and quiet dignity. I sit here on the porch as the evening drapes itself across the sky, the air carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the garden. The world hums quietly, and I hum along with it. Not because I am whole, but because I am learning to be one breath at a time. It's strange, the things life teaches when people betray you. I used to think betrayal was the end, a dark, permanent stain on the fabric of your life. But now I know it is merely a teacher, and the lesson is not in anger, not in revenge, but in reclaiming yourself. I've learned that love can be beautiful, but love is never permission to be used. Trust can be precious, but trust can only survive when it is mutual. And peace, true, quiet, unshakable peace, can exist even after heartbreak. if we are brave enough to claim it for ourselves, sometimes the hardest battles are fought in silence, behind closed doors with paperwork, evidence, and patience as your weapons. Sometimes the strongest acts of courage are simply stepping into your life and saying, "No one else gets to write my story but me." I wonder, if you were in my shoes, would you have had the courage to stand so quietly, so firmly, and reclaim yourself? This story isn't about him anymore. It's about you, and all the times life will test your strength, your dignity, your patience. So I ask you, quietly, gently, when someone takes what isn't theirs, how will you rise? Will you crumble or will you claim your power with grace? If this story spoke to you, if it reminded you of your own strength, please share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, tales of courage, dignity, and human resilience, subscribe to the channel and walk this path with us, one story at a time. Because sometimes, the most powerful endings aren't loud or dramatic. They're quiet, deliberate, and entirely yours.